Already this morning. Woo! We'll call the meeting to order, and Becky, if you do the roll.
Sure. Jim Sheeline,
Here.
Mike Book, Tom Kitson,
Present.
Larry Mamini, Tim Bibbins.
Here.
Nancy Naylor.
Present.
All right, and we'll go around the room. Nancy, do we have anything for us?
No, sir.
Yep.
No, sir.
Nope.
Thanks.
Amy?
Nothing.
Stacy?
Probation services.
Very good. Michael?
No, sir, thank you.
John? Nope. Dean? Sarah? Patty? You, sir, in the back sitting on the bench.
Say hi.
Good. Hello, Greg? Clay?
Couple.
Couple things? All right. I was starting to get worried. Everybody was saying no.
Not too easy.
I was getting ready to call you sir.
These are just issues that have come up that I'm still exploring. Obviously, nothing today. But just to keep you guys surprised.
Oh, by the way, I did see the letter in response to the House bill that got passed the other day, and, you among many, many other sheriffs.
Trying to stand it.
Yeah, and I just want to tell you, Clay, I really appreciate you guys standing up and calling calling a spade and calling what's right, and that we have a constitution, and no matter what the General Assembly does, we have to abide by the Constitution. So appreciate that. Yep.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick things. We'll be working with Steve. We haven't had a chance to process yet. As far as the-
Hey, Clay, sorry to be a real pain, but can you find a microphone? You can come up to this table here, well, either way.
That better? Sorry, I'm going to be working with Stacy as far as transferring of the GPS monitoring ankle bracelets over from probation. She graciously took that on 2 years ago. It's really a pretrial services versus a probation issue. So it really she's looking to transfer it over to us at the sheriff's office. So we are exploring what we need to do for that. I have some ideas on how we'll take it on. I believe I spelled them out within this document. The second issue I'm working on, we have a correctional deputy that was injured in an altercation in the jail 2 years ago. Had a knee injury. He underwent surgery, didn't feel that it was right, underwent a second surgery. He has been on modified restricted duty, working up in the control room it's been 2 years. Ultimately, he just got word from his doctor and approached us that he has permanent work restrictions, will never be able to work the floor again. So he understands, he feels terrible about it. He understands that, the other two deputies that he works with, they've been on the floor the whole time, and he's been in the control room. My understanding is they kind of look at the control room. They break it up into 4-hour shifts. You got 4 hours that you kind of get to relax a little bit, not hands-on with the inmates. So he's been taking that on the last 2 years, and his partners haven't been able to work the control room. So he's understanding that his restrictions were that he can't be on his feet, and he's got some weight restrictions, and then he can only work 8 hours. We're looking at the feasibility of possibly making a day shift control room deputy, be basically working 42 hours a week, usually 8 to 4:30. That's the busy time, when we have an inmate come in overnight, that probation will do their assessment. They'll do that with the Polycom interviews. That's when we have the court appearances. So we have to transfer inmates to the courthouse. We have the Zoom hearings. So we're just exploring the feasibility of possibly working with him and making that control room deputy, making him a control room deputy. The shifts are still 3 deputies. If he would be kind of a fourth on 8 to 4:30, if a deputy would call off, he could be that third deputy. So we wouldn't have to necessarily call somebody else in to cover. So that's what we're looking at right now. So I just wanted to bring those to the committee's attention for you to know, and the background if you have any questions. We're still working on it, so it's a work in progress.
Very good. Thanks, Clay. And then you have your thing later on in the agenda on the camera.
Yeah, I didn't think you were ready for that yet.
Yep. Yep. Paul, do you have anything for us before we get to you on the monthlies? Okay. Charlie?
Nothing, thank you.
Wendy? All right.
Only items that are on the agenda. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Everybody have a chance to see the minutes? Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Moved by Kitson, seconded by Naylor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Treasurer's monthly financial report, Paul.
All right, obviously what we're looking at here would be December financials, first month of the year. In terms of fiscal year
Paul.
for us.
Paul, microphone, please. I am playing microphone police today, in case you can't tell.
And usually I'm pretty good with the mic.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, let's start over. So really what you're seeing is December, first month of the fiscal year. Just a couple of things that I wanted to point out that really probably are a view would be the cash balances all still look pretty good, pretty solid. The other thing that I would point out is the revenue expenses. That first month, if you notice, we have a large gap between expenses and revenues, but typically December has 3 pay periods. It's also, some of those pay periods are larger than normal in the sense that you pay out our excess sick time or holiday pay, things of that nature. And then the third thing I want to point out is the last couple of pages you have are the revenues that are coming in. Want to make sure that you look at that in the sense of year over year. Seems that the December revenues are coming in pretty strong. So.
One
that's it.
thing I noticed, I point out, we need to change that last column to fiscal year 23.
Correct. I saw that as I came up here today. I'm like, yeah,
Well, you had to leave something for us to point out.
correct.
But no, I did the same. I skipped down to those last few pages, and as we go forward to the year, but every category is higher than last year.
Everyone. Yeah.
Every one of them.
Yeah. So,
When does the bottom fall out? You know, that's,
yeah, I keep being Debbie Downer here saying it's going to happen, but I just want us to be prepared for when it most likely will.
right,
So,
right. Anybody have any questions for Paul? Okay. All right, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. And Liram, is Liram with us? I don't see Liram. Okay, so we won't have anything from Gredco. Nancy, do you have anything on Insurance Committee?
Just the, added to the packet is the, oh, sorry. We're all guilty. Mine was close too. Added to your packet were the 4 scheduled meeting dates that Tom and I and the Insurance Committee came together and scheduled so that we can have a quarterly, if you will, meeting to get updates on the Wellness Committee, what they're doing, things that are going on. I mean, we don't have any insurance situation this year, so that's what's planned.
Very
Any
good.
questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, any questions for Nancy? Hearing none, we'll move on to the ARPA report. And Sarah, I think you're moving forward with this. Thank you.
So in your agenda there is the ARPA report, the quarterly report that Patty and I prepared. So we will prepare those on a quarterly basis just to update the committee where we are as far as program updates and financially. I know there's some new board members on the committee right now, so we kind of went from the beginning with our award, the award amount, and outlined where funds have went to date. I won't go over all of them because there is a long list and you have that in front of you, but Patty or I would be happy to answer any questions about any of those awards for any agencies or Lee County community agencies that were awarded funds. On the second page, we talk about financial update. So 3.5 million has been allocated to pending projects, and we have about 3 million left. And that has been moved over to Lee County capital projects and moved over to the direction of the Finance Committee. So moving forward, if a committee or a department has a request to use ARPA funds, we've asked that they fill out a board action request form. On there, you can select ARPA funds, and then it will be presented to the finance committee to make a decision and then passed on to the county board for a vote too. Third page that you have there is just a detailed list of expenditures for ARPA and what they were approved at, what's been expended so far, and what remains in some of those expenditures. So we have some that are working on submitting invoices for reimbursement, some that have been awarded funds and haven't used the funds yet, and some have been totally used up. So there's a itemization of those there. Anybody have any questions over any of those items?
Nancy?
We've probably heard it before, but I want to make sure that I understand that the ones that haven't used their funds up yet, I understand why. Is there a limitation, a time limit on when they have to use them according to the ARPA rules?
There is, yes. So they must be expended by December 31st, 2024, or they have to be allocated or obligated to that expense and then be fully expended by December 31st, 2026.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And part of the things that Sarah and Patty be making sure that we do is not only the tracking as we spend things, but making sure that we meet those deadlines and so we don't violate and have to send some money back to the federal government that we shouldn't, so. Yeah.
I'll just pipe in here and say that one of the other things that's been really key that I've appreciated, in particular from Patty, but both Patty and Sarah to a certain extent, is making sure that when an invoice gets submitted for ARPA funds, that it's something that's actually been approved. There's a lot of confusion sometimes about what's under the ARPA allocation and what was approved and what wasn't. And sometimes we think we've approved something through ARPA, but we didn't. So they're very carefully tracking that. And in fact, that's why you're noticing that Sarah or Patty or both will be at finance committee meetings and full board meetings, so they have a clear understanding of what you've approved, and then they can keep tracking that and make sure that they've got the necessary approvals to report to the federal government that in fact this board did approve that expenditure under ARPA. So that's a key part of it.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, unfinished business. We have a supervisor of safety, Sheriff Whalen, and my understanding is Sheriff Whalen did pull that, so that is no longer under consideration. So we'll move to B, Lee County Discover Dixon Joint Tourism Grant, and I think Wendy, you're handling this one.
I am, and in fact, that's why Jeremy England's in the back of the room here from Discover Dixon. So this was brought to you several months ago by Chairman Olson. He was approached to contribute or potentially contribute some match dollars towards a tourism grant. Big goal there would be to essentially a countywide rebranding and focus on a digital presence, a digital website, and digital promotion of tourism in Lee County. That was something that the executive committee initially gave Chairman Olson a head nod on. At the time, it was not on anyone's agenda, so there could be no formal vote. Unfortunately, as with all grants, Jeremy had a deadline to submit the grant, which he did back in December. And now we're coming forward and requesting your approval to provide that match based on that request that was made a couple months ago. Details are in your on board. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to take a look at that, but I specifically asked Jeremy to be here to answer any questions that he may have or that you may have on that. As a person who wrote the grant and has the vision, I thought it would be important that he would be here for questions.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and hear from Jeremy, and then we'll decide what the committee action will be. So go ahead.
So Jeremy, you know I'm going to be the police of the microphone, so find a microphone, will you?
All
right.
Well, I think I'm on.
You are.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jeremy England, Executive Director of Discover Dixon Chamber of Commerce in Main Street. For the last several years, we have been contracted with the City of Dixon for promotion of the city and the surrounding region, as well as outward tourism marketing to a broader capacity. And with that, we have worked closely with, Black Hawk Waterways CVB. We have in the past worked with Lee County Tourism and Diane. And, before 2020, we did have a tourism committee within our own office, but that kind of dispersed as COVID had brought in other different variations of scenarios that we had to deal with within our own organization. But with that, the state has continued to launch tourism marketing partnership campaigns that we have capitalized on in 2019 and 2020 as an office. And with that, we are able to completely rebrand our, Dixon as Discover Dixon. Our tourism marketing has grown exponentially. Year over year, we see results with our sales tax revenues, motor fuel tax revenues continuing to increase, as well as what we've been able to do in niche marketing and target marketing, not just in our region, but in the suburbs, in Wisconsin, in Peoria, in Iowa, and within 100 to 150 mile radius to try to bring in outside commerce and monies to the area. And with that, in 2021, the state did not relaunch the program of the marketing partnership program, but they did this year. So due to that, the city and I in our office had decided to move forward with a grant to try to capitalize on some state funding again to boost our tourism marketing efforts within the city. And as we were working on that grant program, Chairman Olson and I had some conversations, as well as Administrator Ryerson, about what we can do together as not just the city, but the city and the county working together to bolster not just the funds and our marketing efforts in a broader reach. And with that, we added the county into our grant proposal to build off of that basis. In your guys's, I think with your packets, Wendy had provided what we were asked to do was essentially to build a proposal to the county about what our efforts would be with this grant. And breezing over it so I don't take up too much time, what we would do structurally is create brand development within Lee County, content creation. We'd continue to work on maintenance. These are where the funds would go towards, and a lot of this would go towards ad spend. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at your packet, but again, this is just a proposal. This does not mean that any of this will happen. A, we have to get the grant. B, we would have to work with the county on this and make sure that the partnership continues to exist and to build into that capacity. But we're just trying to bring in new ideas to say, hey, this is what can be done in the future of tourism marketing. If you have those open and you were able to get through a couple of pages, there's an estimated budget breakdown. What we were asking and what we included in our budget for the grant was $40,000 in partnership from the county. That would essentially give us $80,000 in tourism marketing spend for county alone. Which I don't think has really been done on an actual tourism marketing push ever in the county. So what we'd like to propose is that you guys partner with us, we partner with you. We create a great tourism foundation and base by creating some really foundational commercials that will air on multiple platforms, whether that's OTT, which is going to be digital advertising on television, your streaming services, traditional media like paper, traditional television, regional and local television, as well as really investing in the future of social media, because that's where a lot of we could get the most bang for our buck is in social. So with the $40,000 and the $80,000 budget, initially what we'd look at is breaking that down into 40% in digital ad spend, 30% would be spent in social media, 20% would be spent in the linear TV, which is traditional television, and then 10% would be spent in brand identity, so recreation of the brand and the foundation of what Lee County is to the outward perspective. We're really excited about this. If we can work together on it, I think we could do some great things. I went in front of Dixon City Council a couple months ago regarding this grant as well, and we talked about what we've been able to accomplish in tourism marketing. When we just actually launched our our annual report yesterday, and if you have a chance, please take a look at it. It is online, and it does show, what we've been able to do with the monies that we've been able to spend in tourism marketing, and that is, year over year increases in visitor traffic. We, last year to this year, or 2020 to 2021, we had another 100,000 extra visitors from outside of the area to the Dixon community. That's pretty great for us. It shows tangible, actual results, and for what our efforts have been able to do. We're able to actually start tracking now. We invested in a data analytics program that tracks cell phone and GPS data. I know it's a little bit creepy, but it's really great because now we're able to show results for what we're able to do, whether that's our events or whether that's tracking different tourism areas, like, let's say that, Amboy Depot Museum. We could actually place in a grid around that and show where visitors are coming from, what the traffic's like, and know that we could target market some of these visitors better because we know where they're coming from and how to bring more folks from that area. So we've been able to see some great results. And we'd really like to partner with you guys on that if that's something that you'd like to do with us as well.
So Jim, obviously that the proposal is that we would take that match, and again, this is all assuming the grant is awarded, but we would take that match from ARPA dollars. So that's the request.
Okay, that was going to be my question. So, and we've got, and Sarah, what would be, this would come under the business development area of ARPA, if I remember right?
We can classify it as that, but when we kind of closed out ARPA and the ARPA committee meetings, we transferred everything over to capital funds. So it's kind of all in a capital bucket, but I mean, we can classify it as far as Patty and I's record keeping as a business development expense versus a capital expense.
Sure. Okay. All right. So to get things on the floor, I'll.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I'd like to make just a statement here. If I'm not a board member anymore, but I am president of Lee County Tourism Council.
I was going to get to you, John. Do
Okay.
you mind if I get a motion?
You get a motion on the floor,
and then we'll have discussion
Okay.
and I'll recognize you.
Very good.
So I got a motion by Bivens. Now, of course, the motion would be that we would take $40,000 for the match out of capital/ARPA funds under the business development range and move this to executive and then full county board. Moved by Bivens, seconded by Naylor. All right, discussion. John, go ahead. I'll recognize you.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be that Lee County Tourism Council is presently doing everything that Mr. England described. At this time, we publish a print brochure. We are developing a digital website. We have various other print materials, and that comes with no cost to the county because it's supported through a hotel motel tax. We have never come to the county, at least in 20-some years, and asked for any type of stipend or money, and because of the hotel motel tax. Now, the city of Dixon has decided in their wisdom to terminate the hotel motel tax agreement with Lee County Tourism. So they will be taking approximately $46,000 out of our budget, which is $90,000. So that leaves us short to do some of the promotions that we have been doing. And approximately 75% of the money we were getting from the hotel motel tax was per Boney Dixon, the rest going to the Down County area. So I would be curious to see how Mr. England proposes to support the Down County area in reference to the various tourism things that go on in Lee County, which we are already doing as the Lee County Tourism Council. So that's my question for him right now.
Sure. So, our goal with this grant is specifically $80,000. If we are awarded, we go all to Down County spending. There'd be no spending within Dixon. We have our own tourism budget for that. That's where there's a separation of those funds. This isn't for us. We were approached in a partnership and we're trying to see if there's something that we could work together on to create a better tourism economy for the entire county, that Dixon and Down County alike. Within our campaign concept, we identified 3 different areas, and that's, highlighting history, outdoors, and lifestyle within the county alone. So talking about the Amboy Depot Museum, Grist Mill, the entirety of Lincoln Highway, capitalizing on outdoors like the Najusa Grasslands, Franklin Creek, all of our bike and, horse trails within the county, camping areas that we have, then highlighting Down County shopping, local makers, art and culture and lifestyle that is outside of the city. I'm not here to try to take anything away from Lee County tourism. That is not my goal. We were not, I didn't approach this at all. In fact, we had conversations, and in those conversations, we thought that, we could help. And then that's, identifying the fact that the state has funding out there for free. And with that, through the grant partnership, the ask was that we have to come up with a match, and if it were going to be assisting the county in tourism efforts, that match would have to come from the county.
So
Yes, sir.
Jeremy, was your intent to work with the Lee County Tourism Council to, make sure that you're not duplicating efforts and whether, John makes a fair point
Sure.
there. Now, when I went through your presentation, I was seeing some things that to my knowledge, Lee County Tourism wasn't covering. I mean, the social media aspect is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger part, and there's costs associated with that. And I don't think that's an area that we are doing. I don't know about the website, John, but I could see if you guys could cooperate and work together, this could be a win-win for everybody. Yeah, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We, due to this announcement from the city, which is not official yet, we have actually formed a small committee with look into tourism. And there are a lot of options we'd like to look at. I think we're being premature to take a vote and immediately, nothing against this plan, but I think we need to look at all the options that are out there. I'd like to see us table this motion for a couple of months, let this committee meet and try and come back to the board with the finance committee first to come up with a plan of action rather than just, I don't want to call this a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's a great plan Mr. England has, but I'd like to let this committee take a look at it.
So I'll just follow up if I might, Jim, on Tom's comments. He's correct in that when this partnership was first discussed with Jeremy a few months ago, the idea of the tourism change specific to the city was not on anybody's radar. We did and have actually met with Diane Nicholson, and we are considering some options. The only thing I would say to that, Tom, is that we made a commitment several months ago, again, before we knew that the city of Dixon was going to withdraw from the tourism tax. And this is an awkward place we find ourselves when we've made a verbal commitment without a formal vote. But I'm uncomfortable not tabling it for a couple of months. I'm uncomfortable with because Jeremy again has already submitted this application in good faith. So I would just ask you to consider that when you take your vote. And I don't know if Chairman Olson has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on, can you click on to the tourism thing and we'll show what, this is just stuff Jeremy come up with. There's a couple pages there, click through them. And, this all started before we knew Dixon was going to pull out on the hotel motel tax. I envisioned, we already sent in for the grant, so we need to act on it. I envision him coming back if we get the grant with a proposal on how we're going to move forward and go there. I think there's synergy. We need to work together. Lee County Tourism has already got a Facebook page now they're working on, but we could enhance stuff and we could do a lot for the community. This really hits the ARPA funds. Tourism was hit the hardest with COVID in the county besides, the restaurants. So to me, this was a win-win for the county. We put 40,000 in, we get 40,000 back, and hopefully we can get this jump started. Just my thoughts.
Jim, can I make a couple more comments?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay. I would like to remind the people in the room that we do have a Facebook page, and we had a person working basically full-time to develop that, to keep it up to date and keep our website up to date. That person unfortunately did leave a couple months ago, but we have another person that will probably be starting next week to do that for us, the Lee County Tourism Council. It does include the things that go in on the Dixon. Our website includes Dixon, obviously, because it is part of Lee County. And I would like to reiterate that speaking with another city official just yesterday, the money that's going to be coming from the hotel motel tax out of Lee County's pocket and into Dixon's pocket will go to develop Dixon. That was what he said. This is in direct conflict to what Mr. England just said. So I'd just like to remind you that for no cost to the county, you are getting the same coverage that Dixon wants $40,000 to develop. So
If I may speak, I didn't make any comment on where funds were or were not coming from. I was not part of any of the conversations with City Hall, the city of Dixon and their negotiations with the county. I have no understanding of what's going on with that. My contract for contracted services with the city of Dixon, we go through contract negotiations on a yearly basis. And that is for a multitude of services as our organization and what we do for the community. Again, I am not here to step on anybody's toes. I'm not here to take over any operations. We were presented with an opportunity and we were trying to capitalize on that as a joint effort between our organization, not the city of Dixon, and the county of Lee. Again, at the end of the day, the grant has been submitted as a proposal on the entirety of the project, and that is efforts in the city of Dixon, efforts in the county of Lee. The synergies between the two and what we can accomplish together are pretty great if we work together. If we do not, and you guys decide to go, in another direction, at least on the grant funds, understandable. We're just trying to capitalize on the fact that there are funds out there. We could bolster our efforts in tourism and the tourism economy, not just in Dixon, but in Down County in a partnership. And that's all we're referencing.
Why didn't Lee County Tourism apply for this grant?
because it doesn't affect Lee County tourism. And I think we looked it over and we got it before the city of Dixon, I believe, got it. But our administration and our board felt that it didn't apply to what we were trying to do. And before, when it was originally proposed to the county, it was a totally different situation than it is today. It was to be a partnership between Lee County and Dixon Tourism, Dixon Main Street. Now it's not.
I think if anything, with the funding drying up, we probably need this now more than ever with our funding going to be cut in half. So.
Just a curiosity question, Jeremy, would it be critical if we make a decision today or if this would be deferred to February? Does it change anything? I'm just asking in regards to what Tom had discussed.
Sure. On a timeline, I can't speak to when the state's going to be awarding these grants. I have no idea. I mean, to be quite honest with you, it could be tomorrow, it could be 2 months from now. What I do know with our past experiences with the marketing partnership program with the state of Illinois, they were awarded early in the year, so then we could get the campaigns going and get the market spend for the year because they are appropriated for the fiscal year that we're in now. That being said, I mean, you need to do your due diligence to make sure that this is something you want to do. We want it to be part of that and to capitalize on that and to build out the grant proposal with you guys included. Again, I'm not asking for funds from you for us. This doesn't benefit us in any way right now. All of those dollars go to complete marketing spend in the Down County, the entirety of Lee County. This doesn't come into my office and we don't receive those funds and use them as operation or labor or any sort of revenue. The entirety of the grant has to be spent for marketing. Just to make sure you understand, like, this isn't a benefit to us. This is a pure cooperation to benefit the county within its tourism economy. And again, we were approached in a conversation and we moved as quickly as we could to make sure that you were part of the grant. But, please take your time, do your due diligence. I'm not asking for any sort of vote today, but I would say if the grant came in and we were awarded, I would need to know if the county was in or out, because at that point, I would have to talk to DCEO and our representatives to then adjust our grant proposal and make sure that we could still at least, take on the awarding part that we have for the city.
Sure. Tom. Okay, Mr. Chairman, based on the information that we're receiving and the grant, the sensitivity of the grant, I believe we should go ahead and accept this, vote it, and not delay it as I originally planned, but we need to continue our plan to look into tourism, how we're going to proceed, but we need to act on this grant, so I'm in favor of it.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion from the committee? Hearing none. Everybody done? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Those opposed, motion carried. All right, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to new business, and we have point A, Allied Facility Partner Approval. And I don't think, we're actually not proving anything today, but that's how it's written in there.
And remember, we had to post these agendas, before things kind of developed on Monday with the Facilities and Maintenance Committee. But my recollection of what happened out of that committee is that we were pending the state's attorney Charlie's review and approval that it meets all the guidelines and checks all the boxes that it needs to. And Charlie, are we still in process on that? Yes, the facilities and maintenance proposal for the HVAC system across the street.
Yes, so I got that from Greg yesterday, looked it over. I had several concerns with it. I actually sent it back to you and to Greg this morning.
So just to clarify, there's two things going on here. There's a maintenance agreement that you did respond to this morning,
Yep.
but this is regarding the larger project and the idea that the Allied Facility Partner is a co-op.
Oh,
and
I haven't
therefore
got anything on that yet.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
You have not had any, no, all right. So we're still pending the state's attorney's review of that and to make sure that it does check all the boxes. So that's kind of where we're at with that one.
And I know Mr. Wilson had a conversation with them after the meeting on, what was it, Monday?
Monday.
Right.
And they were supposed to get information to me. I just don't have anything.
Okay, all right. So
Okay.
nothing to do with that one this morning.
So just so the committee, I know Nancy was at the meeting. Tim reviewed it. Tom, you were there. Mike, I just want to make sure everybody was familiar with what the proposal is as we do the revision of the HVAC system across the street. The intent was that we, with the county, would act as our own general contractor. That scope of work has become a lot more complicated, and so there's a desire from the Properties Committee to enter into an agreement with a company that will basically act as a general contractor and beyond as like a performance contract that will act and engage subcontractors and oversee the work, do the engineering work and all that kind of thing. So anyway, just for our understanding to make sure that we understand as that conversation continues going forward, and we'll wait for Charlie's review. So,
Jim, can
Wendy.
I, just to, again, to clarify for everybody else that might be in the room, this is specific to the HVAC courts building upgrades that were budgeted for this coming year. Now it's just a matter of how do we actually process that,
move forward.
that bid. So it's specific to that.
Any questions from the committee? Okay. All right, going on to point B, revised lots MOU reimbursement of costs revision. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at that resolution or the MOU? And this is a revision that removes custodial maintenance services and the reimbursement that we get from lots for the services that we were doing up there. Wendy, do you want to
I will.
discuss that?
Yep, I will. So what's transpired here just most recently, as recently as this week, is that, excuse me, LOTS Director Greg Gates has requested that we modify the MOU and remove those services because he has another solution. Of course, we've been working towards switching LOTS over to a mass transit district, and assuming that we can accomplish that by July 1st, we were going to be severing these services anyway as of July 1st. So he's just found a solution a little sooner than July 1st, and he's ready to transition into that solution. Just to give you an idea, if you can see from the MOU, that was about a $12,000 give or take income stream to the county in exchange for those services. We also were approached several months ago by the health department. My apologies. The health department has traditionally for, the last 8 to 10 years, they have hired part-time staff to clean their facility, always have kind of done their own thing. The health department has struggled, especially since COVID, to find somebody willing to fill that 10-hour-a-week part-time position. And so we were approached a couple months ago to find out if we wanted to partner with the health department. In other words, they're willing to allocate that portion of their budget to Lee County if in fact our county janitorial and maintenance staff will assist with those duties and responsibilities. I've talked with Greg about that. I talked with Tom Wilson. Everybody's on board with that. So it looks like we will be presenting to you another intergovernmental agreement that will take that 10 hours a week that was being spent out at lots, and we'll actually replace it with 10 hours a week that'll be spent at the health department. The monetary compensation will be $12,000 was what we were getting from lots. The budget for cleaning on the health department side was $8,000. Remember that lots was maintenance and cleaning services. For the health department, it's simply cleaning services. We've already been maintaining the health department because they're in our building. So that's a little bit of the offset there, but there will be a revenue stream that can come from that. And if you're all in favor of that, I'll present a memorandum of understanding with the health department at a future meeting, and we'll get that taken care of.
So for this point B, do we need a motion, or this more of an information item? We do need a motion to move this onto executive?
Yes, you need a motion to at least eliminate it out of the lots MOU because they're looking to make their changes ASAP. The health department component will come along later as soon as we can get something back to you.
Right, so this would be a motion to move this to executive in amending the MOU with lots.
Yep, and ultimately onto the full board, of course.
Okay. Moved by Bivens, seconded by Book. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion, or those opposed, motion carried. Always get ahead of myself. Forget that, asking for the no's. I need Ricky here. Where'd Ricky go? Where was my consistent no guy? Shout out to Mr. Humphrey. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Appreciate that, Mr. Bivens. All right. So now we're down. Paul, you have a fund balance policy for us. And would you like to go through that with us?
Sure. So I passed out some paperwork for you at the beginning of the meeting, but let's talk about just in general what a fund balance policy would be. And really what we're talking about when we talk about fund balance in the private sector, it's basically retained earnings, right? It's what are your differences between your revenue and your expenses? Well, one of the things that I, coming into the role, looked at and said, should we at some point maybe go ahead and put a policy or a resolution together that says we should always strive to have at least so much value in our fund balance. And when I talk about fund balance, I'm really talking more about the general, not so much every different fund balance that's out there. So the background that you got in your onboard was a little bit of a write-up of what that could look like, where you have maybe at minimum 16% of the value as a fund balance at any one time. That 16% basically equates out to 2 months worth of expenses, and upwards of 50% or half a year value. So what I did was I was looking strictly at the just general fund, meaning 001, and I put an 18-month view of what that would look like, and that's the numbers you have in front of you. That's this sheet, and I'll get to the chart because the chart basically is this data. It's maybe a little bit easier to see. But what I wanted to show you was what was your general fund balance over the last 18 months? And it goes anywhere from $500,000 to upwards of $4 and $5 million. And you really have a low point is half of our revenues are, or almost half in the general fund, are property tax. Well, when you look at that, when do we basically collect property tax? That's usually the 1st of June through the end of October, last payout going in November. So your low points are right around your February, March timeframe because you have December, then January, February, March, April, May even, as your only revenue source is the state income tax. There's fees and other things that do come in. So what I was looking at then was, okay, what are our expenses typically run? Well, your typical top line expense is usually that December timeframe. And again, that's because your new raise values have gone in. You've got 3 pay periods. Within those pay periods, there's the holiday pays, the sick pays, the vacation time, or the comp time payout, all to clean up from the year before. So as you look at the data, then I'll switch over to the chart. And the chart, the red line is what's your benchmark, meaning 16.7%. And that chart basically shows those 6 months we talk about, usually the December through May timeframe, where we're below that. So this policy would be, well, what could we do to make that at least hit the benchmark, or what would be our recommendations? Well, that's the blue line. That's strictly general. The green line includes capital in that calculation. And in effect, capital is, in a way, our reserve, right? So if you're looking at that, we more than meet that minimum request of this proposal, if you will, or this policy that I'm kind of going through. But what I wanted to show you was where you could probably work it either way, just have a plan for during the half a year when you're not bringing in property tax, how would you support your general fund? Well, you would support it through your capital if needed. And most of the time, even when it goes below that threshold, it really is a timing issue, and it becomes, hey, that's part of our budgeting framework as well. When we budget once a year, how do we make sure that we know we're going to have the revenues to cover that? So really what I'm looking is maybe, and this is not a vote today, but what I want you to start looking into is, should we be wise, if you will, in making sure that we set ourselves up for the future? And by saying that, what I'm saying is, do we have enough in reserves to cover, if we had a catastrophic event, to cover the expenses of the county until we could get back on our feet? And that's what a fund balance really does for you. So I would gladly take questions, or if Wendy's got any comment, she's graciously helped me write this policy up. We did use maybe others. We did some research with other municipalities and what they've done. And this policy write-up is really a lot of a combination of different ones that we thought were prudent for Lee County.
Okay. Wendy?
Paul's given me more credit than I deserve. I made it look pretty. He gave me that's all I did. But we have talked about it, and the only thing I wanted to add to what Paul said, because I think he covered it very well, is that this has been something on Paul's radar for a while now. The reason it's really coming to the forefront, and I want you to be thinking about this, is that you know that we have a strategic planning meeting of the board, and in particular, what we want to do is get you finance committee members together with the facilities and maintenance committee to start talking about these strategic capital projects. And when you do that, you need to consider, what is it, a minimum fund balance that you want to retain? Because you need to set that aside then when you're talking about the capital dollars you have left to allocate towards these projects. So you need to be keeping that in mind. So that's why we took the time and energy to bring it forward now. As Paul said, this is a draft copy. This is to get you thinking about it. We're not necessarily looking for you to move forward with this at this point in time. Let's just get it on your radar. But last but not least, the only thing I will add is, right now, Paul's right. The green line makes it look like we don't have to worry about a fund balance policy because we're always well above the critical needs of covering in those 6 or 7 months when we're not getting property tax. It looks like we got plenty of money to take care of that. But we won't have plenty of money if we start allocating some of those capital projects. That's why I want you to be thinking about this now. So anyway, with that said, I'll turn it out to anybody else that may have questions or comments.
So I'll just make a comment. every organization I've been involved in has a policy. And even though, you know, and I remember when I was on country board, we had a investment policy, we had a general policy, policy. And those, they don't necessarily have to be set in stone, but it gives you a baseline, a guideline to go by as you know, us and our responsibility as finance committee and generally as county board members. And Wendy's is exactly right. We've got some huge projects ahead of us. We've got multiple expenditures in our buildings and systems. And this this policy gives us a baseline of what to measure against and as we look through things. So that's my editorial comment. Anybody on the committee that would like to, Mike, you've worked, I mean, not only in your personal business, but in previous life, you've worked with policies and things. I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary, extraordinary.
No. Is there any action required here right now?
Well, if you want to adopt a policy, then you do need to make a motion. Now, this is written as an ordinance, so it would need to lay over for a month. But if you wanted to move forward with this, your motion at this point would be to move it forward to the full board for laying over a month and then ultimately voting on it a month from now.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, I mean, Paul, you weren't looking for any action as far as this month goes, or were you?
Well, not necessarily, but I guess I don't want you to, I don't want it to get lost in the weeds, so to speak, in the months ahead. Really, as Wendy pointed out, what I wanted to show you was, yes, we do have funds, and I'm not saying don't spend any money. What I was saying was let's be prudent with what we have and how we spend it, and make sure that at the end of the day, we do have some type of reserve available for that emergency. So if we didn't do it this month, I'd like to see it at least by next month, yes.
But the parameters that's laid out here was basically the 2 months going against capital in general, 2 months as a minimum, 6 months as upper.
Yeah, the upper echelon would be 6 months, and what we would look at there also.
And that's
is,
really kind of the goal to have is
correct.
Consistently, it would be a 6 month.
Correct. And that would be just with the general fund, meaning that blue line on your chart would be, a 6 month or 180-day value. Right. If we were ever consistently over that value, obviously we look at it more, on a month-to-month basis, but at the end of our fiscal year, we would then transfer any of that extra value to capital.
So, pleasure of the committee.
I've always been involved in the private sector with what I've done, and this is standard practice. Right. I always have to have reserves. It just makes fiduciary sense.
Okay. Well, I would entertain if that's the feeling of the committee. And again, remember, this is a policy that can be adjusted. Yes, it becomes an ordinance, but it's something that can be amended over time as we move forward. But this, to my view, this is a good starting point.
And in fact, Jim, sorry to interrupt again, but in fact, in the policy, it identifies those opportunities for flexibility in the case that something comes up and you can't meet these fund balance minimums, for example. There's flexibility in there, and the board is in control of, adjusting or modifying that fund balance minimum if it's ever needed. So you would still be in control. This just sets a guideline.
I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved by Book, seconded by Naylor. Any further discussion? It's too bad the state of Illinois doesn't, Or do we want to even go down that road? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. And of course, Becky, the motion would be the fund balance policy be moved to executive for consideration of the full county board. Thank you. All righty. All right, we are down to D. Sheriff Whalen, you're up.
All right.
You know, I almost did. You heard that little minuscule pause? The S word almost came out, but I stopped myself. You know, I'll get better.
What was the S word? Oh. Now I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah. So obviously Zoom is the wave of the future now, especially in light of the pandemic. There are some issues that we might have to, with this Pretrial Fairness Act that's currently in abeyance while the Supreme Court reviews it. There might be weekend court. During our meetings, we talked about how we would accommodate this with the judges and attorneys and the clerks. And we thought we might be able to accommodate it through Zoom. So with that being said, our current Zoom, I believe I attached pictures, is just a laptop with a camera that's loose in the jail. The corrections deputy would then access the Zoom meeting and then back off and set that in front of the defendant as they're going through the hearing. Kind of a concern since it's obviously they're might not be happy with what happens in the Zoom hearing, so they could get angry and destroy the laptop, as well as pick it up and use it as a weapon against the corrections deputy. What I proposed, we have these Polycom interviews. We have 2 of them. Basically, it's one way. The Zoom feature, my understanding is that they can segue out into a separate meeting, so the defense attorney can actually talk with the defendant separately out of everybody else's hearing and knowledge. So what I'm requesting is we have an open slot for a Polycom suite with the Zoom feature. I'm requesting that we obtain that so then we can actually shore up the security with this system. The bid just for the product is $10,808. I put some extra in as far as the labor. It looks like the labor is going to be $199.50 an hour for installation. I would assume $12,500 would cover all that.
Now, Clay, this is in the picture. So that first picture is of the laptop. It's the second picture of what we'd be purchasing, or
something similar to that. That's a current Polycom system. They won't adapt for the Zoom feature. That's why we have to purchase a separate one. But it's going to be something similar to that, you know, as far as being hard cased, enclosed, and secure.
All right. Now, the request was to come out of capital. You don't have any other place for equipment? What's that? Do we have any other place? I always with what we going on well, I know it's coming, Clay. I'm always on these kind of things. I'm always asking if there's other places that we can pull money from rather than always running back to capital. Paul, is there any other fund that this would qualify under that this could come out of?
You know, not that anything is just coming to my mind. I mean, this to me is a capital expense.
Okay.
Unless, and it's too early to tell this early in the fiscal year, unless there was, you know, excess available budget in somebody's department or, you know, to that degree.
Right.
You know.
Right. Okay.
No, I was going to move to approve.
Okay. All right. Very good. So I got a motion on the floor to approve the request of $12,500 coming out of ARPA, and hopefully it'll be that or less, depending on what the installation cost is. Is that okay, Clay?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. So moved by Book, seconded by Kitson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
And that's just approved, correct, Jim? It doesn't need to go to finance.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, that would have to go to the full board for.
To clarify, capital ARPA, capital ARPA needs to go before the full board.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it would go to executive and then to the full board. So it would have to be on the full board agenda.
Thank you.
Yep. thanks for that clarification, Becky. All right, we are down, oh, look at this. We're back to Wendy and we get to try the toys again. Onboard testing.
So some of you have already heard this explanation, but for those of you who haven't, I will explain to you that, as you well know, after the full board meeting last month, I was very, very disappointed in the way things went. And so I issued a very sternly written email. I did get attention of Onboard and had an hour-long conference call and went through my concerns. And they are addressing many of them. One of them, though, they kind of threw back at me. And this idea that you all, with the tablets, oftentimes get locked in because your toolbar at the top goes away and you can't back out, you can't go forward. And the only thing you can do is click the on-off button and come back in. And I had addressed this with them before, but not satisfactorily. So I brought this back up again. And they said, we will be happy to address that. You please, though, be more mindful about what exactly members are doing in the tablets right before this occurs, because they're trying to narrow down the scope of what is happening. And right now, that's a very broad, what I gave them was a very broad topic. It just keeps locking up. Well, they need to know more. So we're going through this again, and this time I'm asking you to be mindful of what steps you're taking that either get you locked up where you can't vote, or if you have trouble getting into the voting piece of it, to be more mindful of that, and then share that with me after the meeting so that I can pass that along to them so that we can start to narrow down the scope of when this is happening and why it's happening. So we're doing it again. So Becky, are you ready? Oh, the nerve.
You locked me out.
So behind the scenes, this is very permissioned. So we have to set up the permissions of only finance committee members at finance committee members, for example. I also have to permission the meeting clerk to be able to access it, which I didn't do apparently this time because Becky can't get in. So I am going to go ahead and change this from a draft state motion to a real motion, which should throw it out to you. Once again, we're just testing the system. There's not a real motion behind this.
Now, we should be on the actions page.
Well,
Waiting to see
theoretically,
that.
you should be able to do this from your meeting. But I know that some of you have gotten to where you go to the notification page to be able to vote on it. But theoretically, you're supposed to be able to get to this from your meeting. So I have already opened the voting, so let me know what's going on. I'll be out there to see.
I'm still locked
Okay.
out of my whole thing, so.
Mine just
I'm not
popped
gonna be
up
able to
on
help today.
actions.
What do we, okay, actions?
Okay.
Yeah, actions.
Finance test?
Okay, I went to actions. Finance test. Really? And I'm going to vote no.
Everybody's up, all right.
I need it.
All right, so go ahead and.
I can change to abstain, let's do that. We can play with it till he says close.
Email and it messed up.
All right, because Becky was locked out, her computer is the one that's being displayed up there, so you're not actually going to see the votes like you typically would. I could sit here and fix this and get my up there on the screen, but for the case of moving forward, and I know you've already seen what the screen looks like, we're going to go ahead and just go forward. Jim, at this point, what would normally happen is the meeting chair would close the vote, and at that point, then the meeting clerk, in this case, it's going to be me, will close the vote. And then
I
that's when
don't do that myself here. I
No,
direct
you
to
verbally
do that.
say, close the vote. And
Okay.
you, because what you're doing essentially is notifying everybody on the team there and make sure they've all had a chance to vote. And
Right.
somebody can get, wait a minute, I'm not in yet.
Okay, so Wendy, please close the vote.
Closed. All right, and again, you're not seeing it because I don't want to take the time to get my screen loaded up there, but I do see that we had 2 yes votes, 1 no vote, and it looks like 1 person that abstained for a total of 5 votes. And then, of course, as we just demonstrated before, it'll show who exactly voted in what way. So that all worked. Tell me, how many of you went to the voting using your actions
I used
section?
actions.
Actions. Anybody else go through the meeting agenda itself?
We only had 4 votes, I think.
No, I think I've got 2 that said yes. Oh, yeah, I do only have 4 votes.
Nancy wasn't
Mine,
able
I
to
can't.
Oh, because Nancy couldn't get in.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't.
I'm locked
okay.
out.
I'm sorry, you're
No,
correct.
I just want to make sure we didn't.
Yep.
Now, what did you do? Write down, you know,
She pushed.
Nancy's, it's a long story with Nancy. We'll figure her out
It's
afterwards.
been a 3-week saga, let me tell you.
It has been an ongoing saga, hasn't it, Nancy? So in any case, how many of you then, I got 2 of you that went through the actions window to click on that and pull it up. Is that what you did also, Tom? And Tim, do you know, were you actually?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's the other thing I want to understand is how you're getting there, or in some cases not getting there for the case of figuring out.
And so you. Nancy just reached over.
I want you to know your board rules specifically prohibit board members from doing that.
Prohibit not voting on someone else's computer.
Exactly. Tim?
So you know, this came through on my phone also, on my app.
So when the meeting clerk, in this case myself, pushes the open the voting, what it does is it pops up in a window and it says, do you want to notify everybody? Now, this isn't necessary in this environment, but this software, remember, is also out there for the corporate environment. And a lot of times in the corporate environment, when they're voting, they're not in the same room together. So I would typically say, don't notify. I think the other girls have typically said, do notify. But when we say notify, you all get a notification that, by the way, the voting is opened. You know that because you're in the room, but if you're in the corporate environment, you wouldn't necessarily know that. So that's what that's all about.
Right.
All right, thanks for the taking me through that one more time. We have some kinks to work out with onboard and before we actually do launch this county-wide, because that was very alarming what happened at the full board meeting last time. So thank you.
Amen. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Very good. Moved by Book, seconded by Bivens. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carried. We are adjourned.
Who made the motion, Jim? I'm sorry.
Mike,
I'm going to get out.
Mike?
Mike and Tim. Tim.
Oh, Tim. Thank you. You are leaving yours here, Mike. Awesome.
The reason I can't do anything is I got the wrong mouse.
Who is?
It's me. Somebody's trying to call me.
Here. This is what he texted me.
I have no idea.
Here.